What is up, guys, and welcome to Fourth and Ward. It's this little show I'm starting, some longer form content to put on my YouTube channel, where hopefully I'll have some guests come on and we'll put these things out once a week. But it's also a good chance for you guys to go out and throw some Q&As out there. I get a lot of, especially my TikTok inbox, get questions all the time that I'm not able to answer with you guys just because it would take forever. So I thought, why not compile it all together, and then we can make a little long form content out of it for YouTube. So just diving deep here in my DMs, I had a little list of questions that I thought might be pretty humorous because we're all trying to have a good time here. What is the most ridiculous excuse a player gave you for missing a game or being late? Well, I don't know about you guys, but especially in the dog days of the fall, it seems like we got more dentist appointments or funerals. Somebody's grandma might die about 5 times the same one just so they can miss practice in the mornings. And that's always a good joke. And so whenever we get back in the coach's office, one of the things we're talking about is what our guys miss for, and it never fails. It's always a dentist appointment or a funeral. People are always dying in the family. What's the funniest thing a referee or opposing coach ever said to you during the game? Man, I can already think of the story I want to tell. It was a freshman B team football game, which normally get played on Thursday nights, but the team that we were playing on Friday with the varsity guys, they didn't have a second freshman team. And so we had to go and schedule a little makeup game. And of course, the only time that this team was free was on a Wednesday. So normally it's an off night for us once practice is over with the JV and varsity guys in the afternoon. But instead, as soon as the varsity practice was over with, I had to hop in a car and drive about 40 minutes up the road for a freshman B team football game. And of course, it came down to the wire. And we were actually losing towards the end of the game. They had a long play go all the way through. And player was celebrating, doing some unsportsmanlike as he was entering the end zone. And so I asked the ref, I was like, is it not a penalty or something if you're taunting or anything like that as you're entering the end zone or crossing the goal line? And the ref said, he wasn't hurting nobody. He was just having a little fun. And so that's when I got a little heated because, the letter of the law says that if he's taunting a guy or something like that as he's crossing the end zone, then touchdown could potentially get called back, which would put us back in the lead. And so the ref, he said they were just having fun and, the spirit of the rule. And so my red-blooded side came out, and I asked him if he was a spirit of the law kind of guy, and that he must have voted for Kamala, but he didn't take too kindly to that. But the crazy part is we ended up winning that game, last play of the game, and with a freshman B team on a Wednesday night. We're not even supposed to be there, on a miraculous post route that split them right up the middle, and we scored and then kicked the game-winning extra point to win that thing and head on back to the house. That's definitely probably the funniest thing I've had an interaction with in terms of a ref or something like that. Have I ever had a player's parent try to coach from the stands in a way that cracked you up? I'll never forget. Years ago, we're in a sub-varsity game, and the team we had on sub-varsity that year was not very good. They just got pounded week in, week out. It was like bringing sheep to the slaughter. You knew every Thursday night those guys were going to get pounded. And so, of course, that's how it's going. They're just marching it right over the field, running power, counter, bug, just smashing us. And we had a parent yell from the bleachers, tackling, coach, they need to work on tackling. Y'all need to work more tackling in practice. And I was still kind of a young guy, so I wasn't going to say anything to the crowd or anything like that. But we had a guy on staff. He had some years under his belt, and he hollers out, it's a great idea. He turns around in the crowd, and I shut the heck up. He didn't say the word heck, but I got to keep it PG, and it's a family program. Was there ever a moment on the field where you had to stop yourself from laughing at something totally absurd? Oh my gosh, all the time. It's always in the sub-varsity games, whether it's JV, freshman, things always happen. Usually on varsity games, it's a little bit clear cut, and you don't want to laugh about anything too much. But one thing I had to think about was, again, it was a sub-varsity game, a little freshman B team, and they were getting absolutely pummeled. And we had this linebacker. He was about the 5th string middle linebacker. Yeah, bless his heart. He's a hard worker and a yes sir, no sir kid. He just wasn't that great at football that particular year. And so just to get him playing time, throw him in there at nose guard. And I told him to cut every play. But before that, we had a little timeout or something like that. I called him over from the sideline. And I had him practicing his cut technique right there on the sideline before we subbed him out. So that was probably just, and sure enough, it was like an 8-play drive, and every single play he's out there just cutting and doing his best to try to do something for the team that would wind up helping us out. I tell you about the time, was there a time when weather turned the game into a comedy show? I'll never forget, about 3-4 years ago, I can't even remember now, we were driving out to a school, really nice stadium, brand new, one of these $50 million football stadiums that they build out in Texas. And we get there, and it's a district contest, so this game means something. and I'm in the press box, and the weather was kind of shaky as we were heading in. We knew it could be a factor. But man, with all the traffic and stuff, it took us over an hour to get to this stadium. So we're just trying to get the game played so that we ain't got to come back and make the same trip on a Saturday. Of course, we want our Saturday afternoons off. It's the only time off we really get throughout the season. And we get up there to that game, and sure enough, I think the first kickoff, even before kickoff in warm-ups, lightning strike. So boom, we got to wait 30 minutes. Come out there, get the opening kickoff, march down, get a score, boom, lightning strikes again. So we got to go back inside. And this thing went on, I don't know, it might have been like 3 hours of weather delays. I think it was finally kicking off for real about 9:30 at night, 9:45 at night, something like that, after about 2 or 3 hours of weather delays. And I'm pretty sure the game ended about midnight. We get back to school about 1 a.m. or whatever time it was. But you want to talk about a party in the locker room, to keep those guys hyped up. They had a boombox or something going on, and they kept playing this daggum song with all the trumpets and the crowd's going wild. And you could tell every time we went out there to go back and try to play the game that the other team really didn't want to be there. We always made fun of them. They were kind of the pretty boys or something like that. They didn't want to get out grimy in the rough weather. But I've never seen a group of guys that were more locked in to play. We ended up winning the game by a pretty hearty margin in what was probably the longest football game I've ever had to be a part of, because you throw in about 2-3 hours of weather delays, it can add on real quick. What is the most bizarre fan interaction I've witnessed at a game? There was this time where we were going down playing a big heated rival. They're a 5A high school or something like that, but their stadium was kind of falling behind on the times, and it was kind of a small school setup in terms of the stadium. And I was in the press box. I'm sitting right there, basically shoulder to shoulder with people in the top row of the bleachers. It was a crazy game, bright and sunny outside, but this crazy thunderstorm comes through with the sun still shining. It's just back and forth. I think the final score was like 50-something to 48 or something crazy like that. And you name every kind of way, scoops and scores, pick sixes, things like that. We had people scoring all kinds of different ways. And so I'll never forget, we're pounding on the glass. We're having a good time. It's a rivalry game. If a big play happened for us. But, of course, we got real quiet if the other team had good play. And, it got dicey right down there at the end. And we had a big score, pound on the glass, all that good stuff. And I got a nice little middle finger salute from one of the fans in the crowd. And, it was just crazy interaction at a game. This guy looking like Stone Cold Steve Austin out there in a wife beater, giving me the double bird in the middle of a football game. And so we're pounding the glass, having a good time, but we wound up losing the game. So then I was kind of relieved in some ways because I didn't have to worry about getting back to the sideline because I know if we had won that game, old Stone Cold would probably give me the stunner in the top row of the bleachers. What is the funniest thing I've ever had go wrong with equipment, like pads, shoulder pads, helmets, the scoreboard? Oh, my gosh. When you coach sub-varsity football, it never fails. You got to do the old knee pad check. And depending on the year, the refs are a little more hardcore about the knee pads than others, whether or not kids got them in or whether they're covering the knee or they're above the knee. And I'll never forget one year. It was about 5 years ago, I guess. They were really harping on the knee pads, and then the knee pads had to cover the knees. And it might have been that same year that we had a freshman group that really wasn't too great, was struggling through some games. Not a lot of football smart guys, but bless their hearts, they were sweet kids. But we get out there and never failed. Like game 1 or 2, we're getting the opening kickoff, first plays in, but they're sending guys out to our sideline left and right about some knee pads. And so then we had to do a little pause, and we had to ask the whole team right then and there who didn't have knee pads. And I swear about 8 kids raised their hands up that they weren't properly equipped. And they ain't like we don't give them the knee pads. So we busted them for it that next day at practice, talking about what the equipment is that they got to have in order to be able to play in a football game. And turned right around that next Thursday night, and we're going through warm-ups. We get them all in their military lines, their lines of 3, so we can get the warm-up going. I just had the thought in my head, like, we got to ask these guys about knee pads. So I said, does anybody not have knee pads on? Sure enough, about 3 or 4 guys raised their hands. And this was a thing all throughout the year. We knew there was going to be a handful of guys not having knee pads on. And it just didn't matter how many up-downs they did. Those kids couldn't get it through their heads. And, we finally told them that, if you're not even smart enough to get dressed right, you can't even get out there on the field. So knee pads always going wrong. Whether or not you got guys covering them up, back flaps showing, all this and that, it always becomes a problem. What is the funniest misunderstanding I've ever had with a player about a play call? Not necessarily a play call, but a substitution. We were in a sub-varsity football game, and we had this guy who, body type-wise, probably would have been been a better run support guy for us, and this team was marching it all the way down. So we talk with our guys that are on our edge and that are in charge of the quarterback, if it's read option or zone read or something like that. They need to be able to hunker down. So if that quarterback pulls it, they can make a play on it. And this is something we harp on every single day at practice, all throughout the game. They've been killing us with the quarterback pulling it and converting. And so I had this other kid in who's doing a great job, but as we get closer to the goal line, you kind of assume they're going to run the ball. Sub this other kid in, and sure enough, that very first play, quarterback pulls it, walks right in for the end zone, the go-ahead touchdown. I just turned around to the kid that I had in there for a few plays in a row and just said, "Gosh, I should have let you in. I'm sorry about that." Of course, I was grabbing him by the chest plate because I'm all hyped up, and I let him know to his face that I screwed that one up. Get this kid over the sideline. I was like, "We had just talked about quarterback pulling it. Why are you out there just gunning for the running back?" He's like, "Oh, I thought you said somebody else would have the quarterback." And I'm like, "No, literally since day one of football practice, we've talked about you having the quarterback." And it just never fails with kids. You can tell them a million times. You could rep it a million times. You're going to have some guys that just screw it up. What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to 4th and Ward. Again, this was the pilot episode, just trying to experiment with some different things. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out, subscribe, like, send me a DM, and we'll try to get those answered. We'll try to have a guest on a weekly basis, and we appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you.